Welcome to Let's Talk, a show about talking to kids about race and racism. I'm your host, Karen Tao. In this episode, I meet with Annie and Jan, who come from very different backgrounds and are raising their 3-year-old daughter, McKenna. They discuss the difficulty in raising a biracial child in Utah.
I expect that she will be the only kid, if not one of a couple of kids, in her elementary school that looks like her. People will see her and sometimes with or without asking, just feel her hair. And I don't think she's noticing other kids have their hair felt, right? By strangers.
And encouraging kids to embrace different.
I think parents can teach their kids to, if they see somebody that's completely different, go speak to that person that's different. There's gonna be difficult times in those conversations, but live in that difficulty.
Prior to having kids, I imagine you had conversations about what it would mean to have a multiracial family and some of the things that you might have been preparing for in prior to even having children. So maybe start with some stories about that.
I knew automatically that this dynamic, me being black, she being Asian, that combination was already going to be a packed thing.
Can you say more by what you mean by that?
Well, yeah, packed in the sense that there's so much that goes with being black. Not to say that there's not so much to go on with being with any race, but in an environment like Utah, there's not that many black people here. There's not that many people of color here. And so a child with that combination is going to experience some of the same things I experienced when I was a kid.
When I've read to her at night, story time, in multiple books, every time in the past she's seen a black character, male or female, she goes, that looks like my daddy. That looks like my daddy. And it's a picture of Oprah, it's a picture of a pastor, you know, it's a picture of whoever. Yeah. And so she has definitely been aware of color, but her dad really is the only consistent person of color for that reference point for her. You know, so I say, you know, it's not a picture of daddy, but it sure looks like daddy, huh? And we say, you know, why? And the hair looks like daddy, or the face looks like daddy, or something like that. And there's an added element too, because I was adopted when I was a kid. So I'm an Asian woman, but my whole family's Caucasian people. So my worldview is very white. So in my family, she's got my parents who are Caucasian, Jewish, so she's got white cousins on my side, she's got black cousins on his side, but none of them are mixed race. Jan is the only reference for a black person for her in Utah, but I'm her only reference for Asian, even in our whole family. So those conversations, and as she gets more aware, is going to be very, very interesting.
Absolutely. Lots of layers to that. And these conversations that you're having with each other and thinking about for McKenna is really about what's her narrative going to be as a multiracial child.
Her experience is very delicate. Her traverse through this world is not the same as a little blonde, blue-eyed, straight-haired white girl.
You know, the predominant culture and the predominant race in the state of Utah is Caucasian. She goes to a preschool and she's maybe one of 2 or 3 in the entire school that's not Caucasian. She is the only kid in our neighborhood that looks like her. I expect that she will be the only kid, if not one of a couple of kids, in her elementary school that looks like her. It's very similar, and white.
So when you talk with McKenna about this, and you know, I think that this is really helpful because you're having these conversations really, really early, and in many ways it's because you have to prepare her. I imagine talking to your own families, so grandparents, aunts and uncles and cousins.
Before McKenna was born, I wrote a long letter about the forthcoming birth of our first child. Tried to lay out in a very open way how that looks, how are their feelings going to be towards a baby that is mixed race? How are they going to address specific things?
To see her. To really see her.
To absolutely say, oh, there's a mixed baby, or there's McKenna. How do we include her in the conversation that is unique for her? The letter did not go over well, but I expected it not to. And
why do you think it didn't go well?
Because it wasn't safe for them. It wasn't a letter that catered to them being safe. It wasn't a letter that made them feel good. It wasn't a letter that was like, oh man, we adopted Annie. How could we have racial issues?
Right.
Right. That's where a lot of my family
Yeah.
came
I'm
from.
not
like-
racist.
Right.
Yeah,
You
why
know,
are
so
we
I had-
getting this
yeah.
letter?
So my family read the letter, and they had concerns. Their concerns were more of, why would you write a letter to white folks that questions their authenticity or questions their idea of race? So then I had to reverse back. Why can't we have that conversation? Why can't we make Annie's parents feel uncomfortable? It's okay. They're still family, and within family, there's going to be those messy times. There's going to be those uncomfortable times, and out of that comfortability becomes this amazing thing. And now we are, I think, way more closer to. I'm more closer to her parents. McKenna loves her grandparents.
And that's, I think, a really important point, is that race and racism, talking about it is very uncomfortable,
Absolutely.
particularly for white people.
Right.
It is not a conversation that they have had in their homogenous, for many, in their
Right.
homogenous spaces.
Absolutely.
And what my ears perked up when you used the word, it wasn't safe. And I've read that letter. I want to trouble that a little bit because it was very respectful, very honest, and thoughtful. And courageous to open this conversation up.
Thank you.
Oftentimes, people who are not used to talking about race immediately sort of get resistant to this idea
Right.
because they've never had that conversation before. But that doesn't mean it's not safe. It's just not comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think maybe that, thank you for kind of redirecting my terminology. Safe in the sense that it's uncomfortable. Safe in the sense that I'm not used to that feeling. So not being used to that feeling and not being comfortable, I can now just shut down.
Sure.
And I don't want people to feel that they have to walk on landmines anytime that we're talking about McKenna or we're talking about race. But know that it is a volatile conversation. But that doesn't mean that you can't go forth and have that conversation.
I want to make sure that we're not overly bringing up race to the point where every single conversation with and about my daughter is going to be about race.
Yeah,
like
because
I don't
then
want
she's
that
she's not free at that point.
for
I get
her.
that.
I don't want that for us. So it's going to be interesting towing that line for me in the context of myself, but in the context of our relationship in the family as well. When are we going to bring it up and talk about it, and when are we just going to let that one go?
Sure.
Right?
I toe the line quite a bit, and there's plenty of times where I allow life to happen. I allow conversations to take place because I know it's not the time and the place to approach it, because I know myself that I'm hyper aware. And so being hyper aware, I have to step back, allow people to learn, allow the situation to play out.
And you also illuminate this idea of how tricky a lot of these conversations are as adults, and then linking this back to McKenna's listening in, and what you're modeling for her at home and within your nuclear family.
Absolutely.
Is that this is an open conversation, that we will continue talking about it.
I think we do have open conversations. I let her express herself about whatever she wants to when it comes to race, and I'm very hyper aware of her words that she uses. I'm aware of the things that she chooses as toys. If she picks a white doll, I let her have that white doll. If it becomes repetition and she's singling that out, we address it. Now, that hasn't been the case. It's good that she's able to see that we can have open discussions, and her input is validated. I don't ever want to stifle her learning.
So giving her a lot of room to explore.
Absolutely.
And we know that early research around doll preferences for African American kids from as young as 3 or 2 even, they would prefer the white dolls and attribute positive characteristics to the white doll and negative characteristics to the black doll. And so it sounds like you are already on
But
it.
where does that come from? That's not coming from the home. That's coming from the information that she's receiving.
Right. At school, commercials, in the
Absolutely.
community. People will see her and comment on how cute she is, or comment on her hair, and they will sometimes with or without asking, just feel her hair or, you know, do things like that. And I don't think she's noticing other kids
Sure.
have their hair felt,
Right,
right, by
right.
strangers. She said to me when I was dropping her off at school one day, and this was, you know, months ago, maybe even last year, so she was only 2. And she said very clearly to me one morning, "Mommy, I don't want anyone touching my hair." And I said, "That's great, sweetie. If anyone touches your hair, just use your big girl words and use your manners and say, please don't touch my hair."
Giving her some language that it is okay to say no. And it also opens up this conversation where she's already noticing, hey, no one else is touching anybody else's hair in my class. Why are people sort of isolating me, noticing me?
Yeah.
It's okay for her to say no, but it's also okay to say, yes, you can touch my hair, and say, well, now I'm going to touch your hair. Because now it's not I'm different, it's, oh, we're just exchanging contact, we're exchanging, we're learning about each other, so that she doesn't become this different branch.
So we were talking about this idea of how do we balance this notion of we're all human beings, and I say that to my own children, how we share this humanity, and at the same time recognize that color blindness is not something, not an effective sort of idea to carry around, especially for kids of color, where we're not colorblind. We're a very racialized society. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that.
I'm glad you brought up the term colorblindness, because I hear that a lot. Well, I don't see race. I mean, I see you as who you are. Well, that's great. Then that means that you have to see that I'm black. You have to see that I'm different than you are. And within that difference, we can start to talk about all the great things that exist in that space.
The best way I've been doing it so far, and who knows if it's effective, is I try to just use examples of puppies, right? Because we have a dog at home. We go for walks all the time in the neighborhood. And so if we bring up race and skin color, I try to equate it with the fact that, you know, we are all just like the puppies we see on our walks. We're all puppies, and we love all puppies. But doggies come in different colors and shapes and sizes, but we're all doggies.
All the same.
You know.
I think I want McKenna to experience her world free of the baggage of race. I hope that she's able to have a great experience where even if the world doesn't start to look like her, it doesn't matter. I think parents can teach their kids to, if they see somebody that's completely different, to encourage them. Go speak to that person that's different. Include them. Include that little kid who has a burqa on or a hijab. Talk to them, because that's how you learn, and that's how we expand our experience.
What you're talking about is how do we build empathy for one another. And this is something that we want to instill in our children, is that they're empathic beings who can understand and hear another person's story and not say, well, that's different from me, so I'm not even, it's not worth my time.
Right.
But how do we instill that in our kids? And it sounds like these are things that you are also modeling for McKenna despite having political, religious, racial differences, that we can still have really important conversations that might be uncomfortable.
Absolutely. Just being exposed to McKenna, being exposed to us, I think those families who are white, who only have white interactions, can speak to their kids about, yes, there's going to be differences all around us, and embrace those differences.
Being a family here in Utah and not having our extended families here, it's just the 3 of us. I think we've done a really good job. I feel like we've done a really good job building what I like to call our village, right? So her little friends and their parents are people we get along with really well, and we're very progressive in our thinking and very like-minded and have those open conversations, and right now I see them running around playing, and it's, they're none the wiser. But as they get older, the fact that there's been that exposure and that they have that friend that is a mixed race girl is going to be huge. That's going to be the fortification for them.
For them, absolutely. And more of it.
And it's important that village understands my perspective. And they know, oh, what's Jan going to say to us today? Well, absolutely. And they're free to challenge me on that, because in those conversations, I can now learn where you come from. There's going to be difficult times in those conversations, but live in that difficulty, experience that difficulty. That doesn't devalue their experience, and it doesn't devalue the other person's experience. You have to be able to blend those things. And I think that's where you come out ahead. You come out so much better.